In the 17th century, Europe was a continent in turmoil, grappling with political upheaval, religious strife, and profound spiritual questions. In this era, a young woman in a quiet French convent would receive mystical revelations that would forever alter the course of Christian spirituality. Her name was Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, and her visions of the Sacred Heart of Jesus would inspire a worldwide devotion that continues to this day.
The year 1600s in France was a time of immense change. Louis XIV, the Sun King, ruled with absolute power, and France was embroiled in both political conflict and religious tension. Amidst this chaos, the Church faced numerous theological battles. One of the most significant challenges was the rise of Jansenism, a heresy that would influence much of France, including the lives of many faithful, including Margaret Mary. Jansenism was a theological movement that emerged in the 17th century, heavily influenced by the writings of Cornelius Jansen, Bishop of Ypres. It emphasized a harsh and rigorous approach to salvation, stressing predestination, the total depravity of human nature, and the need for extreme self-discipline. Jansenists believed that only a select few, those who had been predestined by God, could attain salvation. For the rest, the possibility of redemption seemed distant. Their beliefs led to a gloomy view of God's love and grace, promoting fear and doubt rather than a relationship with a loving, merciful God.
Jansenism took hold in parts of France, especially among the intellectual elite and some members of the clergy. The movement rejected the idea of a merciful, loving God who was close to his people. Instead, it emphasized God's judgment and the distance between the sinner and the divine. Amidst the intellectual and spiritual turmoil of her time, Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque was born in 1647 to Claude Alacoque and Philiberte in the village of La Haute-Cour, France. Her family, devout but humble, raised her with a deep love for God. Her father was a prosperous notary. The family owned a country house and farmland. They were considered to be very rich. By the time Margaret turned 8 years old, her father died, and this was a severe shock to her. Claude had loved his family dearly but had been short-sighted and extravagant, and his death put them in hard straits. She was sent to school with the urbanist nuns at Cheryl. Margaret loved the peace and order of the convent life. Under the care and formation of the nuns, she developed an ardent love for the Blessed Sacrament. The nuns were so impressed by her devotion that Margaret was allowed to make her first communion at the age of 9. 2 years after her first communion, she had a terrible fever which left her paralyzed and confined to bed for 4 years. Some of her father's relatives moved in during this time as well. The relatives took charge of their farm and household, and very soon they became the masters of the house. Margaret and her mother were disregarded and treated almost as servants. Margaret sought refuge in the Most Blessed Virgin Mary. She made her a vow to the Virgin Mary that if she recovered, she would dedicate her life to God. Miraculously, she recovered, and her commitment to serving God grew stronger with each passing day. When she was 17 years old, her brother came of age, so her family was able to regain control of their assets. The relatives left the house and Margaret and her mother could be happy again. For a brief period of time she lived a relatively ordinary life, enjoying the ordinary social functions of her day, even considering the possibility of marriage. Margaret's mother started encouraging her to become more social in the hopes she would find a suitable husband. One night, after attending a ball in an evening dress, Margaret experienced a vision of Christ scourged from top to bottom. Margaret believed she had betrayed Jesus by pursuing the pleasures of the world rather than her religious vocation. She did a lot of mortification to make up for the sins that she felt she had committed when she had put human acceptance before her Lord's will. At the age of 24, though her family initially opposed her decision, Margaret Mary put aside all worldly pleasures, resolved to enter the Visitation Convent of Paray-le-Monial, a quiet religious community known for its contemplative prayer life. Little did anyone know, this small convent would become the birthplace of one of the most profound revelations in Christian history. As a novice, Margaret excelled in the virtues of humility and selflessness. However, she had her tough times in the convent. She could not meditate in the formal way expected, though she tried her best to give up her prayer of simplicity. She was slow, quiet and clumsy. She was also very sick. Although Margaret was wearing the religious habit in 1671, she was not officially admitted to profession until November 1672. Some years passed quietly in the convent, and then Margaret began to have experiences which seemed to be of supernatural origin. The first of these occurred on December 27, 1673, when she was kneeling and praying alone in the chapel. While deeply immersed in prayer, Margaret Mary received her first vision of Jesus Christ. He appeared to her, his heart radiating love and burning with divine fire. This was no ordinary vision. Jesus revealed his sacred heart to her, a heart pierced with thorns, yet aflame with an unfathomable love for all of humanity. Jesus spoke to Margaret Mary, saying, "Behold this heart, which has loved men so much, and which has received so little love in return." In this vision, he invited her to share the message of his love with the world, to call humanity back to his heart, and to offer acts of reparation for the sins that wounded it. Sacred Heart of Jesus's message of love and mercy to Margaret Mary was revolutionary, especially in a time when Jansenism dominated much of the religious climate. Jansenism promoted a fearful and judgmental view of God, a stark contrast to the message of love and mercy that Margaret Mary was receiving from Jesus himself. As Margaret Mary shared her experiences with her superiors, some of the nuns and even priests at the convent were skeptical, influenced by the pessimistic theology of Jansenism. But Margaret Mary remained steadfast, trusting that the love of the Sacred Heart was a gift that the world needed, especially at a time when many felt distant from God's mercy. After being laughed at for some time, Margaret Mary found a trusted ally in Father Claude de la Colombière, a Jesuit priest who became her spiritual director. Father Claude recognized the importance of the visions and the divine message they carried. Together, they worked to spread the devotion to the Sacred Heart, despite the opposition they faced from those who clung to the severity of Jansenism. Despite the challenges, Margaret Mary's persistence paid off. With Father Claude's support, she began to spread the devotion to the Sacred Heart. The faithful were encouraged to honor the Sacred Heart by receiving communion on the first Friday of each month, and to establish a feast in honor of the Sacred Heart. Over time, the devotion gained popularity, and in 1856, Pope Pius IX officially established the Feast of the Sacred Heart, confirming its importance within the Church. The message of Christ's love, mercy, and reparation for sins was a balm to the spiritual wounds inflicted by the harsh theology of Jansenism. Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque passed away in 1690, but her work was far from over. The devotion to the Sacred Heart continued to spread throughout the world, transforming the lives of millions. Today, the Sacred Heart remains one of the most beloved devotions in the Catholic Church, a symbol of Christ's boundless love and mercy. In a world that often leans toward fear, judgment, and division, the Sacred Heart of Jesus calls us to a different way of living. One rooted in love, mercy, and reparation. Saint Margaret Mary's legacy is a testament to the power of divine love to heal and transform. The 12 Promises of the Sacred Heart of Jesus to Saint Margaret Mary. I will give them all the graces necessary in their state of life. I will establish peace in their homes. I will comfort them in all their afflictions. I will be their secure refuge during life, and above all, in death. I will bestow abundant blessings upon all their undertakings. Sinners will find in my heart the source and infinite ocean of mercy. Lukewarm souls shall become fervent. Fervent souls shall quickly mount to high perfection. I will bless every place in which an image of my heart is exposed and honored. I will give to priests the gift of touching the most hardened hearts. Those who shall promote this devotion shall have their names written in my heart. I promise you in the excessive mercy of my heart, that my all-powerful love will grant to all those who receive Holy Communion on the first Fridays in 9 consecutive months, the grace of final perseverance. They shall not die in my disgrace, nor without receiving their sacraments. My divine heart shall be their safe refuge in this last moment.
Dear people of God, especially the devotees to the heart of Jesus, may the Sacred Heart of Jesus that is burning with zeal for love and for mercy touch your hearts today, as He touched the heart of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque 350 years ago. May this loving devotion of the Sacred Heart of Jesus continue to be an essential part of your very lives.